the haunting images of a gruesome Hamas handover of the remains of some of the Bibas family and an 83-year-old hostage, Oded Lifshitz. This week reminds us that not everybody shares the same values and that it's important to make reasonable assumptions as to what other people are doing. We can't assume that everyone wants to live in peace together. This is a great line in the Torah this week. It says, you find somebody tunneling into your house to rob it, and you strike that thief in self-defense, not guilty of murder, because the person who's trying to break in isn't doing it to give you flowers. They're doing it to try and cause you some sort of harm. And so, as Rashi famously here makes clear, if somebody comes to kill you, rise up and kill them first. We're not supposed to sacrifice ourselves for somebody else's evil intent. Rather, act in self-defense. And you do that. Somebody tunneling in at night, the assumption is that they're coming to harm you. The next line in the Torah is, if the sun is up and you can see and sort of have a sense of what this person is doing, then you can't just randomly strike them and kill them because somebody breaking in the middle of the day probably just wants to steal something and it's not a capital offense, right? So, in other words, make a reasonable assumption about what somebody's intention is, and if their intent is to kill you, don't wait around and let it happen. Kill them first. Of course, it's striking that this involves tunneling. Hamas is famous for their tunnels. The biggest project that Hamas undertook in their 17 years of ruling Gaza is to build a tunnel system underneath Gaza. They didn't do it to bring Palestinian freedom. They didn't bring it to bring Palestinian flourishing. They did it for the purpose that we've seen over the last 16 months, to attack Israel, and then to make sure that when Israel attacks back, that Israel would have to go through the civilian population on the surface to get to Hamas fighters beneath. And to cause more, Hamas's intent through the tunnels is to cause more Palestinian death and to trigger negative world reaction for Hamas causing those deaths, to bring the reaction onto Israel for that. We're not supposed to fall for these things. We're supposed to, again, look at the purpose of tunneling the Torah teaches and to make a reasonable assessment of what it is. Hamas says what it wants to do. It wants to cause genocide of the Jews. It wants to create a caliphate, to create a not free Arab entity, Muslim entity in Palestine. And for those who support it, go ahead. We read the Torah in part to remind us that we're not in a short-term cycle. We live our lives day to day, week to week, year to year. But we read the Torah in part to remind ourselves that we're part of something larger and that we've been around for thousands of years, and God willing, we'll be around for thousands more. And we look forward to a time when everyone can coexist peacefully. And as the Torah teaches this week, that is not what everyone seeks to do. And when you're dealing with somebody who doesn't seek to live peacefully, one should act in self-defense. Shabbat shalom.